Hello, and welcome to One Tech World. I'm Shannon Clark Johnston. I'm a career coach, a trainer, and keynote speaker. I'm here today to share with you a deeply personal story about resilience, recovery, and reinvention. One that shaped not only my career, but my entire outlook on life. It's a story of facing the unimaginable, learning to adapt, and ultimately coming out stronger on the other side. My hope is that the lessons I have learned will resonate with you, whether you're navigating a career shift, overcoming a personal setback, or simply looking to build the confidence to tackle what's next. Because resilience isn't about just bouncing back. It's about moving forward with purpose. Imagine going about your day, grabbing your coffee, heading to work, thinking about your to-do list, when suddenly your body stops working the way it always has. No warning, no explanation. That's exactly what happened to me. At 30 years old, I was paralyzed. One day, I was thriving, building a career, newly married, and dreaming of the future. The next, I was in a hospital bed, unable to walk, with doctors who had no answers. This was a situation that felt totally out of control. And if you're like me, someone who loves to plan, who maps out every detail, this was terrifying. But here's what I ultimately learned. Recovery didn't start with medication or physical therapy. It started with my mindset, and it started with resilience. And that's what I'm here to talk about, to share with you what I've learned about resilience, not as a motivational buzzword or just pushing through a bad situation, but as a series of small, intentional shifts that can help move you forward. And the best part, these lessons aren't just for those overcoming physical challenges. They're for anyone navigating setbacks, whether it's in your career, relationships, health, or personal growth. Now, I know most of you haven't woken up one day to find yourself suddenly paralyzed. But here's what I do know. You're in an industry that is constantly evolving, where adaptability isn't optional, it's essential. The world of tech moves at lightning speed. One moment, you're ahead of the curve, leading projects, implementing innovations, and the next, there's a massive industry shift or a restructuring, a new wave of AI that changes everything you've built your expertise on. And that can feel unsettling, even paralyzing in its own way. And at some point in your life, you've been knocked down. Maybe you didn't get that promotion. Maybe your career pivoted in a direction you didn't expect. Maybe you're the only woman in the room constantly fighting to prove your expertise in an industry still catching up on equity. Or maybe right now, you're sitting in your own version of a hospital bed moment, wondering what's next. And I'm here to tell you that it's all about what happens next. Because resilience isn't a superpower that's only accessible to a select few. It's something anyone can build, day by day, step by step. It's an ongoing practice. You know, we tend to think of resilience as this heroic singular moment, someone triumphantly overcoming an obstacle. But in reality, resilience isn't a moment. Like I said, it's a practice, and it's built through 3 essential steps: acceptance, accountability, and adaptability. You know, when I was lying in my hospital bed, my mind went to all the wrong places. You know, why did this happen to me? What did I do to deserve this? Why is my life falling apart? And honestly, I stayed there for a little while because when something difficult happens, it's natural to want to make sense of it. And the turning point for me came about 6 months after my diagnosis. Turns out it was a rare neurological condition called transverse myelitis, and it impacts less than 1% of the US population every year. I mean, seriously, less than 1% of the population gets this. Great. I mean, I couldn't win the lottery, but sure, I'll take the rare neurological condition. At least I was popular with all the doctors. It was a fascinating case, but I really would have preferred to win the lottery. Anyway, 6 months in, and I was still dealing with its residual effects, going to physical therapy several times a week, dealing with fatigue, and walking with a limp. And from an emotional standpoint, I was still feeling lost, still grieving the future I'd imagined for myself. And I sat across from my dad at dinner one night, crying through our meal. Actually, I cried through drinks, appetizers, dinner, and dessert. And I said, why did this happen to me? My life is a total mess. And my dad, without missing a beat, he looked at me and he said, yes, it is. And then he said, but it's not going to stay that way. And that was the moment I realized something important. The time and energy I spent questioning why was keeping me stuck. You see, acceptance isn't about liking what's happened to you. It's about acknowledging your new reality so you can move forward. You have to own it before you can change it. And I see this all the time in my work with leaders, and especially those in the tech space. People resisting change because they don't want to let go of how things should be. Maybe a new system is being implemented. Maybe AI is threatening to replace someone's role. Maybe they simply feel like they should be further along in their career. But resilient people don't waste time fighting reality. They own where they are and they focus on what's next. Where in your career or in your life are you stuck in the why? And what would happen if you shifted to what now? When I was about to be discharged from the hospital, I found out that my insurance wouldn't cover the inpatient therapy I desperately needed. Instead, they wanted to send me to a nursing home. I was 30 years old, my entire life ahead of me, and I was headed to a nursing home. I was devastated. My family was devastated. I was really, really angry. But then a miracle happened. 2 physical therapists approached me with an offer. They said, if you commit to showing up 4 days a week, we'll work with you one-on-one here in the hospital. But before they agreed, they asked me a critical question. They said, are you willing to commit to this? Because we're not going to work harder for your recovery than you are. And that was the key. Everything else in my life was so out of control. But the one thing I could do was to show up for my physical therapy sessions. So here's my question for you. What one step can you take today to reclaim control over something in your life that didn't go as planned? Because no matter how impossible or overwhelming a situation may feel, there's always something you can take ownership of, always one thing you can act on. Now, if you're thinking, that sounds great, Shannon, but what if the future I wanted is no longer possible? And I get that, I really do. But here's what no one tells you about resilience. It requires you to let go. You have to let go of how things should be in order to move forward. Let me share an example of what that's looked like in tech. Many of you may know Ellen Pao, a former venture capitalist tech executive. And in 2012, Ellen took a stand against workplace discrimination at one of Silicon Valley's most prestigious firms. She filed a lawsuit against her employer for gender discrimination. She'd spent years working twice as hard, proving herself in a male-dominated industry, only to be overlooked for promotions that went to less qualified male colleagues. She could have stayed quiet. She could have thought, well, this is just how things are. But instead, she chose to challenge the system. And that lawsuit sparked global conversations around bias in tech and venture capital, making way for stronger DEI policies and pay transparency initiatives. But here's the thing. She didn't win the lawsuit. In fact, she lost. And at that moment, she had a choice. Let the loss define her or adapt and find a new path forward. Ellen chose to keep going. She became the CEO of Reddit, where she banned revenge porn and closed toxic communities, steps that other social media platforms would later follow. And she went on to launch Project Include, an organization dedicated to fixing systemic issues in tech. She let go of the expectation that her success had to follow one specific path, and instead, she built a new path that impacted thousands of women in tech. That's what adaptability looks like. And tech professionals, especially women in tech, face challenges all the time. Maybe you had a vision of how your career should unfold, but now the job market's shifting. And maybe you think you should be further along by now, but the promotion you've been chasing hasn't come. But should is one of the most dangerous words in the English language because it traps us in expectations that no longer serve us. I had to let go of a lot of shoulds during my recovery. I had to stop thinking I should be able to walk now. I should be further along in my life. My body should be working the way it used to. But instead, I had to start asking, what can I do with where I am now? And when I did, that's when things finally started to move forward. Change is coming for all of us. And throughout your life, you will experience changes in your career, your relationships, finances, and health. The question isn't whether change will happen. The question is, when it comes, will you fight it or will you use it to propel yourself forward? What's something you're holding on to because of how it should be? And what would happen if you let go of that expectation and allowed yourself to create something new? Here's what I want you to take away from this. Resilience isn't about pushing through. It's about how you decide to respond when life pushes back. You must decide to stop asking, why me, and start asking, what now? Take ownership of what you control, even if it's just one small action, one thing that you can do today. And let go of should and start building something even better. Because your story isn't over. There's more growth, more opportunities, more change. And resilience isn't about avoiding challenges. It's about using those challenges to grow. Thank you.